So hello everybody, I'm Alex Kyriakidis. I'm the founder of Vue School. Initially I'm from Greece and I've been living in Amsterdam for the last couple of years. You can find me on social media under the username of Hootlegs. Today my talk is about what I think you should love and you will love about Vue.js in 2023. This talk includes about 45 resources, so there is a lot of information. And I think if you are coming to Vue.js, if you're relatively new to the community, if you have been using it for maybe less than a year or year and a half, there will be a lot of items to pick up from this talk. But I'm very confident, even if you are a Vue.js veteran, you will pick up at least one item that you didn't know about. As LaFrance mentioned, this is an interactive talk, so I invite all of you to participate. So pick up your phones to join us. And there will be some pop quizzes and polls during the talk where we will be seeing the results live on the screen, hopefully. So to participate, go on this URL, wooclub.com, and enter the code VueSchool or scan this QR code to join directly. And in the bottom, we can see how many people are in. Once I have like 75 people, we're good to go. Okay, that was fast, great. You can still connect while I move on to the next slide. To see how the polls and the quizzes look like, we have this demo one, which is, what is your favorite framework? Vue.js, React, Angular, or jQuery? Okay, that's good competition. Okay, and when the timer is done, you cannot vote anymore, as you notice. So yeah, surprised to see a lot of people like Vue.js, and jQuery is the second best. That's interesting. Okay, moving on with what to love about Vue in 2023. The first item that I am personally the most excited about is the growth of Vue.js. It's really amazing to see how much the usage of Vue 3 has grown this year. And this is a screenshot from Evan's presentation in Vue Amsterdam, where he shows that in January 2022, Vue 3 had a bit less than 500,000 downloads in January. And this January, it has tripled in number, and it's over 1.2 million downloads weekly, which shows how many developers and companies rely on the Vue core for their software. And they have to download it every week. This doesn't mean it's new projects every week. This is the npm installs, of course. So yeah, a quick quiz. Since you're all in and you don't need to connect again, you can see this on your screen, you can vote directly. How many sites do you think have been built with Vue.js over the years? 79,000, 800K, 4 million, 21 million. Great. I'm surprised most of you guys knew this. The answer is 4 million websites have been built with Vue.js, which is a massive number. This is a bit less than half of the population of Greece, to give you an idea of how big the number is. And within these 4 million websites, there is a lot of side projects and small startups, but there is also some giants that use Vue.js either for their core applications or their side projects, like including companies like NASA, Microsoft, Jumbo, Wikipedia, Upwork, Amazon, and whom not. And if you are using Vue Devtools, you might have seen recently that it's been on fire. Like for me, most sites that I open, Vue Devtools is blinking that Vue.js is detected on this page. And I'm not sure for the US, but in the Netherlands, I get this when I log into my bank, when I pay my mobile bill, like almost everything, when I get the groceries. And if you are not using Vue Devtools, you must install it. Like right after this talk, you must install Vue Devtools. It's a great tool for developing Vue apps. And on that note, there is also a new DevTools plugin for Chrome, which is specific to Nuxt developers. This is very new. It was released a few months ago, and it has a ton of features for Nuxt devs. You can see your pages, routing, your components. You can use you can see the Nuxt plugins, update them, and lots of other stuff. And they keep adding features like very often. So definitely download Nuxt DevTools if you are not using it already. Great. One of the most important things that I am glad and excited for Vue.js this year is that the Vue.js ecosystem has matured and stabilized. So over the last year, the migration of the ecosystem from Vue 2 to Vue 3 was completed. So as a community, we have been unified and we can all progress to using Vue 3. So in 2022, Vue 3 became the default. And this gave the time to the largest libraries, I think the most used ones, which are Vuetify and Nuxt 3, to catch up with the latest version, upgrade, and they had the biggest responsibility because they had the most apps that they needed to support in getting to Vue 3. So we had these two giants catch up with Vue 3 after a while the rest of the ecosystem was already prepared. And now most of the Vue libraries are Vue 3 ready, which allows everybody else to start either migrating from Vue 2 to Vue 3. But most importantly, all of the new apps can safely start with Vue 3. And one amazing thing for the Vue ecosystem nowadays is that there is a library for every need. And this is very important, especially if you are new to Vue.js, to have in mind. So every time you want to build something new, you need a new feature, you need to use a utility, do some research and see if somebody else has already done this. It's very likely there is a team of people who have created a plugin for what you need or a library, and you don't need to start from scratch. And as Daniel said yesterday, the library is going to be much better than what you would build by yourself because it's multiple people, it's open source, and it's battle tested and constantly updated. So before we see some cool Vue.js libraries, I have two questions for you to answer. So pick up your phones. These are multiple choice questions, so you can choose as many options as you want and then hit submit. So the first question is I have not heard of, and here I have a collection of 19 libraries or Vue stuff that you can choose. So choose the ones that you have not heard, maybe before coming to this conference. Give you a bit more time for this one because it's a lot of things just to go through. Why? Cool. Okay, the only thing I can do is to restart this. Does this help? Yes. Oh, I'm offline. That's why it doesn't work. Wow. How about now? Yay. Oh, wow. $10 seconds, so submit your answers if you're almost there. Okay, very interesting. I see that the least known library is Histoire. You guys know Storybook? Okay, that's interesting. I will have a slide for this soon. And then I see a lot of people know about Capacitor, which is cool, and also Tracker UI and Vue Storefront. Like I would expect more people to know about Vue Storefront, but yeah. Anyways, that's very interesting. The next quiz is the opposite. So these are libraries that you have used, either that you use at work or that you have used on your own projects or have tried in general. Okay, lots of Pinia users, cool. Okay, 5 seconds left. Good. I'm glad to see that about 60% of you use Pinia. That is great. About 50%, or like 40-something, use Vuetify. 37% use Cypress. That's great. Lots of people do testing here. And yeah, lastly, Nuxt, over 40%. That's also very high. And Vue use is 40, which looks good, but I think Vue use should be 100%. So anything that less than 100 is not good enough. Okay, great. Moving on, I have a spotlight of Vue.js libraries that I would like to share with everybody. These are not necessarily the biggest ones, but it's the ones that are not represented at this conference, that they don't have a full talk or a demo or something. So the first library that I will highlight is Pinia. I'm glad to see most of, like, more than half of you already use Pinia. This is the intuitive store for Vue.js. It is the official state management library for Vue applications. And Pinia is simpler than Vuex. It's based on the composition API. It has great DevTools support, so you can still have features like time travel, debugging your stores, and so on. It comes with great TypeScript support, server-side rendering support, and it is the recommended replacement for Vuex in Vue 3. And it's much more intuitive, like doesn't have commits and dispatch and all of this terminology that it was confusing for many people previously with Vuex. The next library I want to highlight is Quasar. I think this library is underrated. It's a pretty cool library. It calls itself the enterprise-ready cross-platform Vue.js framework, and Quasar allows you to build cross-platform apps using Vue.js with their library. And on top of being able to build cross-platform apps either for mobile or for desktop, etc., it also comes with a collection of over 70 high-performance customizable web components. So it also serves as a component and UI library. So you can think of Quasar as an alternative to Nuxt.js, but both to Vuetify and to Ionic. So it has like 3 different aspects as a framework. Next, a library that I'm very excited about is FormKit, which they say you can build Vue 3 forms 10 times faster. And there is a talk about FormKit later today. I think it's pretty cool because everybody works with forms. So like most apps need to interact with some data. Okay, the iframe is not working again. That used to work yesterday. But I think I can open it quickly. Yeah, just to show you this example. What is it? Oh, it's not working in general today. Okay, it's not great. But anyways, with FormKit, that's why I should better take videos than having the iframe. But anyways, so with FormKit, you can define your FormKit components. You can define what is the data of your form, and you can define if it's like if it needs to be validated, if it needs to be an array, like what data you need, and you can grab it directly from using FormKit. instead of having to do any inputs and forms by yourself. So definitely check out FormKit if you're working with form data. Next is Vue use. Great to see it's used by 40%, but really this should be 100. Vue uses a collection of essential Vue composition utilities, and they have created a massive library of functions. They have over 200 functions for any Vue app, including things like on-click outside, which is, if you use Vue.js for a long time, probably you have come in need to develop this directive a few times. At least I have. The use draggable, which is for implementing drag and drop functionality, and they use local storage, which is pretty straightforward what it does. And they have over 200 functions for any app. Like when you go to create a utility, check out Vue use. They might already have what you need. If you need to interact with global state, with the local storage, with browser APIs, with microphone, with Bluetooth, etc., check it out. I'm very sure that it's very likely that they already have what you need. So don't start from scratch. Check out Vue use. Next year, I hope to see this use at double. Next, I have the naive UI, which is a cool UI library. It has a pretty cool motto as well. They say it's a fairly complete, theme customizable, uses TypeScript, fast, and it's kind of interesting. And I agree, it's kind of interesting. It has a lot of nice elements, classic stuff like buttons and cards and things you would expect in any UI library. But they also have cool stuff like the carousel and more advanced things. So if you need to have a showcase like this, and you're using naive UI, you can just find this in the library. You can click the show code, get this, and all you need to do is to just apply a v4, and you can have this feature made in 30 seconds. Moving on, I want to highlight Vue macros, which allows you to explore and extend more macros and syntax sugar to Vue. And this might sound a bit confusing, but what this practically does is to give you the opportunity to have more features in Vue.js, and also you can test features from the future in a way, because a lot of features from Vue macros make it to the Vue.js core after some time. And to give you an example, this is the website of Vue macros, and these are some of the features. To check sort vModel, for example, is a feature that allows you to have a shorthand for vModel. So instead of doing vModel equals something, you can do these shorthands. Now, what is really cool about Vue macros is that, as they say here, if you have questions about some of the features, you can comment on the relevant RFC discussion, which is the request for comments. So you can leave questions, you can give feedback, and the Vue team considers this feedback and these discussions, and they decide if this feature will become part of the core in the future, if they're going to change it, if they will deprecate it, and so on. So this is a nice little library for early adopters. Great. Next, storefront UI. I was surprised to see that this is very unpopular in the US. It's way more commonly used in Europe. And the storefront UI is a design system and UI library for e-commerce from Vue Storefront. And it's similar to the native UI, but this is specific for e-commerce. So here I have a quick video showing this page with all of these products. You see they have colors, ratings, and whatnot. And you can grab the code. Again, you can copy-paste the codes from the UI library and have this page built in your e-commerce in seconds. Why would you spend weeks to design this when you can just steal it from Storefront UI? And they have all of the pages. This is the category page, but they have checkout, detail card, error form, login, and whatnot. So if you're working with e-commerce, definitely check out Vue Storefront UI. Awesome. Next one, Capacitor. I also saw that this is a quite unpopular library yet, but still it's pretty cool. I think it's the new Cordova, and it is a cross-platform native runtime for web apps. And Capacitor, what is really cool about it is that it doesn't have its own way to write code. You can drop it in your existing application. So if you need to have mobile apps like iOS apps or Android, you can install it in your application, like an npm module. Then you can choose the native platforms you need. Let's say, iOS and Android. And then you can run some commands and you can compile your application for both platforms, and you can deploy it to the corresponding app stores, which is pretty cool. And even if you need to use some native features, like the mobile camera or like Bluetooth, things like that, they have some plugins that you can use, and you can interact with the native features of the phones directly. And it's really cool that you don't have to rewrite or write specific code for this. It can just work with your application. So if you care about having a mobile app, definitely check out Capacitor. Great. Moving on, Vitest is relatively a new library for blazing fast unit testing. It is also made by a core team from Vue.js, but it is not Vue.js specific. And Vitest is really blazing fast. And one of the main benefits, like nowadays, of using Vitest is that you can use the same setup from your application to run the test. So you don't need to have one Webpack config and one Vite config, which is from your app. You can use the same Vite configuration if you are using the latest, of course, in your project. And it comes with TypeScript support, and it is the Jest replacement in a way for Vue 3. So the API is also quite similar. If you are already using Jest, migrating to Vitest is quite easy. Okay, and lastly, I have Trest.js, which allows you to create awesome 3D experiences using Free.js. So if you need to do crazy 3D stuff like this to work with objects and creating general 3D experiences with Free.js, this is a library that is built specifically for Vue, and it's also pretty new. They released the second version a few weeks ago. Okay, I really wanted to highlight a lot of libraries today, but I'm only limited to 45 minutes. I can only show so many, but I made a quick list of other libraries that I think they are worth mentioning, depending on what you need to achieve. I want to highlight Vue i18. This is typically a pretty popular library for projects that are multilingual. It's also been around for many years. I think it even supported Vue 1 back in the day. Then Prime Vue, another Vue UI component library. Chakra UI Vue is also a UI library that it is accessible first, and it's also quite fast. Vuefire is quite cool. It is the official Firebase binding for Vue.js. This is also created by a Vue.js core team member, and it is backed by Google Firebase. Ionic is the same company that also maintain, and I think they created the Capacitor library, and the Ionic is the mobile SDK that also comes with a UI library for building mobile applications. Histoire, the least known today in our poll, is a way to write stories, and it's very similar to Storybook, but the difference is that its API, it's very similar to the Vue.js API. So you create stories in a very similar fashion as how you create Vue components. And it's very helpful if you have a big team and you want to document your components. If you want to showcase different states, like the button is disabled, it's error, it's active, and stuff like that. And then Cypress and Playwright, they are both used for testing. And nowadays they both support both end-to-end testing and unit testing. So yeah, if you're not writing tests already, definitely check this out. Moving on, we have the Vue.js Education, which is something I'm very excited and very happy about nowadays, especially with the Vue 3 migration, seeing also most of the content being up to date. And this takes a tremendous amount of work. Like, imagine how you have to migrate your app. All of the education, like everybody, every Vue creator needs to update their stuff and all of the tutorials and all of their work to be able to teach the latest best practices and the latest versions of everything, not just Vue, but all of the ecosystem. And this is a great thing about Vue.js, as education, rich resources, and ability to keep up and master a framework are key factors for being a successful developer and building great software. Vue.js is amazing that it is so easy to learn, and this was also one of the main and first reasons that Vue.js became so popular and really conquered the web developer market. And it has excellent content available nowadays and a really great official documentation, which was also how Vue.js became initially very popular. Besides of the Vue.js guide that I'm sure everybody knows about, right? Okay, always read the guide first. There is also the official Vue.js tutorial, which is an interactive experience also made by the Vue core team that allows you to learn the subjects interactively. We'll start the video so it's not loading. Interactively, and you can also learn it based on your needs. So when you use the Vue.js tutorial, you can choose if you are using the options API or the composition API, HTML or single file components, and then you can try out the different subjects along with the documentation. And there is also plenty of links inside the guide that allows you to click the link and get that specific content in the interactive tutorial. A fun fact here is that the Vue team have created their own REPL, their own read val print loop, in order to get your code and print it in the browser. And this is also the same tool that they use for the public request for comments. So before they release a feature, when they put it up for feedback, you can try it out and submit, your opinion based on this, based on this tool that makes it interactive and possible for you to try it out. Okay, great. The thing to love about the Vue.js education is that there is a lot of content that is constantly up to speed. And there is a lot of Vue educators, not just the ones I have now on screen, but these are the biggest ones, which are Vue School and Vue Mastery specific to Vue, but also to the Vue ecosystem. So all of the libraries, all of the tools, all of the surrounding things around Vue.js are covered. Most of them are in these platforms, and both of them have been creating content and releasing it every week for many years. And not a lot of frameworks have this infrastructure and community for content, which is really an amazing time to be a Vue developer, I think. And there is also Mastering Nuxt, which is specific to Nuxt developers. This is the official course for Mastering Nuxt. So yeah, if you're using Nuxt, I would highly recommend that resource as well. Okay, moving on, I want to highlight the Vue.js community, and I'm very happy with this community. I think the Vue community is one of the most welcoming and supportive developer communities in the world, and I'm glad to be part of it. On top of having this community, which applies in general for the forums, for online and everywhere, Vue.js has great conferences like this one that allows us to get all together, meet each other, speak with the creators and the experts of the industry, and learn always the latest developments and become better developers. I have highlighted a few conferences to show that there is Vue conferences in different continents. So we have VueConf US, we have the Vue Fest in Japan, Vue.js Amsterdam, which is the largest one, and Vue.js Live in London, also in Europe. And on top of in-person events, there is a lot of online conferences on Vue.js, which is great for the community, since there is hundreds of thousands of Vue developers worldwide, and not everybody can afford to travel and participate in the in-person conferences. But it's important for everybody to be able to be part of the community, participate, and learn. Here I'm highlighting some of the largest online conferences that are Vue Nation, VueForge, and Nuxt Nation. And what is great about these conferences is that they have an equally good lineup as in-person events, and which makes it really accessible. Even though there is no after party, it's still a great experience to participate in the online events. And last year there was over 60,000 Vue developers that joined the online events from all over the world. Okay, now I have a quick question just to remind you that we are still using our phones. So get ready to answer this one. So what is Vue.js Forge? Just another conference, a coding competition, hands-on coding event, a dancing competition. Okay. I think the marketing efforts work way better in the US. In Europe, everybody thinks it's a dancing competition. Okay, so you guys got it right. Vue.js Forge is a hands-on coding conference. And what is quite fun in Forge is that all of the participants build a real app by being part of it. But also all of the speakers, instead of having their own talks and being able to prepare and have a presentation, they also solve and live code the same challenges as everybody who participates, which is pretty fun. And in the previous episodes, we built a Trello clone, an e-commerce application, and an OpenAI app. And in the next episode, which takes place in August, we're going to build a Kickstarter clone. You can check this out on vue.js.forge.com. Moving on, I have highlighted some news resources, and I think as a Vue developer it's important to keep up with the news and the developments of the framework and the ecosystem. And Vue.js has great sources for news. Number one is the Vue.js blog. Then there is plenty of newsletters, and Twitter, there is the official Vue.js account, and Vue tweets about new things that are coming and considerations for the framework. What is the sound? Is it my time coming to an end or something else? Okay, I will ignore it. So Vue.js blog is on blog.vue.js.org. It's called the Viewpoint, and the Vue core team often write about the new stuff on the blog. Vue is also pretty active, so here you can learn about important announcements like the Vue 3.3, for example, that was announced a few weeks ago. They also have an RSS feed, so if you like that, you can also subscribe to get this automatically. There's also this new page on the Vue.js guide where they highlight some community newsletters. You can check it out. I think they are also constantly keeping it up to date. So a few quick highlights. Vue.js feed, they publish news and small bite-sized items weekly. Michael Fisher runs a newsletter with exclusive tips that he sends every week, so that's pretty cool. Usually the tips are quite hardcore, so highly recommend. And Vue.js developers newsletter sends the newsletter every Tuesday since 2017, which is a long time. Great. So next, another thing that it's noteworthy, and I'm very excited about Vue in 2023, is the Vue.js job market, especially for companies or developers who picked up Vue.js many years ago. It was not always, happy days like it is now. Nowadays, there is so many, thousands of companies who use Vue.js. There is so many Vue developers. So this is something that has been in a, like I said, it's happy days. So I would like to highlight a resource that it's called Vue Jobs. They have been posting jobs again for many years, and a lot of big companies also use Vue Jobs to hire developers. And how many of you have found a job using Vue Jobs? Raise your hand. Okay, only a couple. Yeah, last year it was like a bunch. I think I met over a dozen of people who had all found jobs from Vue Jobs, which was very, very exciting. But yeah, glad to see there is a few this year as well. So yeah, if you're looking for jobs or if you're hiring, definitely check this out. And I will also highlight the Vue School hiring app, which is kind of the opposite of Vue Jobs, where our Vue developers create accounts based on their skill set. They can define everything, and then companies can filter the devs based on their stack and connect and make dev friends from the platform directly. Okay, time to get interactive again. Now it's a more technical question. and it's about how you used Vue.js over the last 12 months. The options on the question is, in the past 12 months, I worked on Vue.js applications only, both Vue and non-Vue apps, non-Vue apps only. Okay, the vast majority works with both Vue and non-Vue apps. Great, so what I will show you next is the most interesting for everybody in category 2 and 3, people who work both with Vue apps and non-Vue apps. If you use Vue, if you work only on Vue apps, yeah, everything is fine for you. You don't need this one, or in general, you don't need a lot of help. So one exciting thing about Vue 3 and the composition API nowadays, which I call the underrated awesomeness of it, is that you can use the composition API in any application, even if it is a Vue application. And this might sound a bit obscure, like why you want to do this. I'll explain this later. And I have a quick example with handlebars. Does anybody know what handlebars is? What, really? Wow, that's very surprising. Usually I see 0 hands. Like, okay, I had, that's great. So handlebars is a template language. The template language looks like this. It visually looks similar to Vue.js, but it's not reactive. You don't have the fun of having like a reactive language or having all of the features you have in Vue.js. It just looks similar in the template. So this is the problem with handlebars. And if you work in an agency or if you have legacy applications, it can be very painful when you have to maintain a handlebars app or any legacy app, or when you have to implement new features. And I get this inspiration for this example from a friend of mine who asked me if there is any way to make working with handlebars better, because they were just handed off this project at the agency, and they had to build a lot of features in a short time. So my recommendation was, of course, to install Vue.js and build all of the new stuff using the composition API, since they are all Vue developers, right? So this is a mix of handlebars and composition API. Again, the handlebars is just a placeholder. It can be any non-Vue application. So in this example, we have handlebars that we are importing from NPM. And along with it, I'm importing some features from the composition API, specifically the computed, ref, and watch. And this is the handlebars code. It creates a template. We don't really care how it does it. It has a compiler, but again, it doesn't matter. And this is an important function, the render counter, that it needs to run in order to find the DOM element, which is this DOM element, and compile it, which essentially updates the values. So what this does is it has this output here, and we have a counter that it increases. So you can assume that you did have this handlebars app, and you wanted to implement a new feature. Let's say the new feature is this counter, this counter. So we do have the handlebars as the base, and using the composition API, you can build the full feature within here without even having any idea of how handlebars work. So here is just creating a number using a ref, creating the double as a computed property. The counter is just the number and the double. And this is the only difference than if you were using the a Vue app, which is running this function, which we will define as global, and having a watch to watch the counter, and when it changes, to run the render counter function, which will update the DOM. And yeah, we want to run this immediately. So to show you quickly the HTML as well, this is the template. Again, it looks like Vue.js, but this is not reactive. This is just how handlebars prints things in the browser. And instead of here having the typical on-click that we have in Vue.js, we're using the native HTML and JavaScript feature, which is to run on-click and give it a function. So even though we are not in a Vue app, we can develop this new feature or any other new feature using the composition API, which can really improve the developer speed. So at this point, you might wonder why you might want to get into a handlebars app and do all of this stuff. And the answer, before I saw more arguments, the first answer is that sometimes you might have to, especially with legacy apps. It's not that you have a lot of options or that you can spend 50 hours to figure out and do everything with like jQuery or native JavaScript, while you can have super tools from the Vue.js ecosystem. So the first reason to use the composition API in non-Vue apps is that you can use the framework so you're already familiar with Vue, you know the copy, you can go ahead and use it, and you can even copy-paste code. So if we were making a counter, it's very likely you already have a counter somewhere, and you can copy-paste the code and now have it also in your legacy app. You can also bring in your composables. With the composition API, it's very often that you have composable files that they solve specific problems, and you can reuse the same. You can bring them into your handlebars app. You can also use the same ecosystem from your favorite libraries. You can still use Pinia to share global state between your files and components, or you can even use Vue.use and get advantage of all of these utility libraries and functions that they have in the framework. And it's also a great way to begin the migration. And this is also a very common thing nowadays, that you have either a legacy app or an Angular app, and you want to migrate it to Vue.js. Instead of doing this directly and starting from scratch, you can start building the new features with the composition API, and gradually also start the migration in the background. And lastly, you can keep the same mindset, especially when you work with Vue apps and non-Vue apps. It must be quite annoying that you have to think, oh, here it's reactive, here it's not reactive, here I'm doing it like this, here we use a totally different way. So it's great when you can use the same mindset in all of the apps, and all of this will result in building faster and also having more fun while developing, which is very, very important. So yeah, and again, highlighting this is not just about handlebars, this is about any application that it's not Vue by default. Awesome. And as the last resource, time came by so quickly, right? This is the last item in my presentation, and this is the project that I'm personally very excited about, and I think it is very exciting for most people in the Vue community. And this is no other than the Vue.js certification. We started this project months ago. This is a partnership between Vue School and Evan You, the creator of Vue.js. And our goal is to define and set a standard for what it means to be a competent Vue developer, in order to provide reassurance to the developers to feel more confident in our skills, and also to provide a guarantee to employers that, developers care about their tools, they know their stuff, and hopefully result in higher pay. The certification program will consist of an online exam, which will include theory, coding, and best practices. And honestly, this is the largest and most complex project we have developed in the history of Vue School, and that's why we're extremely excited about it. And if you're using Vue 3 already to build web apps at your job, you're probably fine to take the exam and pass it, but we highly recommend that you take the time to study again, go through the Vue documentation. There is always new stuff, it's constantly updated. There might be things that you missed, or it might be things that you notice now that you are more senior than when you initially went through it. And to say that all of the assessments are developed currently by Vue experts, and all of our questions will be approved one by one by Evan You himself, and a portion of the revenue goes back to Vue.js to support the development of the framework. We are aiming to launch the exams by end of June. Currently, the pre-orders are open, and if you're interested for program updates or getting a pre-order with up to 50% off, you can check out certification.vue.js.org. If you have any questions about the certification, workshops, or other services, or just want to grab our exclusive t-shirt and stickers, you can find us in our booth during the day today. Thank you very much.